Hi, I'm Mark Ledyard, and this is another behind the scenes for the film Eclipse. It's a bit of a tutorial as well, and it's about how we created this solar eclipse effect that you can see in the short film here. It was an effect that is entirely created in After Effects. It's entirely created from stock images and from effects in After Effects. It's really a complete CG build, and I thought it was important to explain how we did it because it's a good example of creating something digitally in After Effects, but then using filters and effects to make it look more organic, more natural, and much more like something that could conceivably have been shot, albeit in a very stylized way. So I'm just going to take you through it step by step. So the first thing we did was we created a composition, and we did the main lens flare effect in this composition. And this composition was a big one. It was 2048 by 2048 pixels. And this composition was so we could see the full effect, see all the rays, all the beams, and so we could zoom into it a bit afterwards as well. And we basically started with an Optical Flares layer from Video Copilot. And we've got lots of light rays coming off this and some other lens flare effects. It's a very simple Optical Flares layer. It's nothing too complicated. It's just basically giving us the sun for the background there. And on top of that, we added in the heat distortion effect, also from Video Copilot, which just dirtied up all the edges and made it look more organic, more natural. And it gives you a great heat distortion effect. It's a lot of noise in there, a lot of great detail. And on top of that, of course, we added our moon. And so I found a free image of the moon online, this one from Wikipedia, and we've darkened it down quite a lot, so I mean there's very little detail left in it anymore. And then that's just got a couple of keyframes on it that move it from left to right. And that moon is pre-comped in its own composition, and there's a reason for that which you'll see in a minute, and that then obviously moves in front of our lens flare effect. On top of that we have another flare layer, and this uses the custom flare that I showed you how we built in the last tutorial with the sky replacements. So the flare elements in this come from a real lens flare that I shot during a solar eclipse. All those beautiful little half-moon shapes, they're actually real elements from a real lens flare shot actually during an eclipse. And that layers on over the top, and so as the moon eclipses the sun, in this top Optical Flares layer we have the moon set as a foreground layer. And because it's pre-comped, Optical Flares looks at the pre-comp, it sees the shape of the moon, and as it moves across, it automatically blocks out the lens flare, so that gives us some animation almost for free. The next thing we added on top of that was a particular layer, almost like embers from a fire, blown in the solar wind. This is not a realistic effect at all, it's very much something stylized, and so I was having some fun with it. And this particular layer emits from a custom layer, and that's a pre-comp again. And all I did was I created a very, very simple shape, this arc, and that's just a white solid with a mask on. So we just used the same keyframes from the moon moving and the arc moving, that little arc shape moving. And that's going to be our emitter in particular, so the particles are going to come from that thin band. And then they're blown by the wind using the physics properties in particular, and so they just move across the sun as if blown from the wind as they come across. Next we have some more heat distortion. Again, this is using the heat distortion effect from Video Copilot, and again that's distorting the edge of the moon now, it's distorting the particles, it's distorting everything underneath it again, providing more detail, more noise, more interest. On top of that, some more colour correction, curves layer, just to add some contrast, some more colour. So you can see the effects starting to come together now. Next I'm using a diffuse glow effect from Red Giant Universe. This is actually one of the free ones that you get if you sign up to Universe, and that's just providing a little bit of bloom, a really nice soft glow. And now the next layer is a lens distortion layer. And all these layers, all these effects, are there to simulate things that might happen if you were shooting it with a real camera. So lens flares, chromatic aberrations, glows, lens distortions, all these things are there to make it seem much less digital and much more organic, much more like it could have really been shot. And this lens distortion effect is from AE Scripts and AE Plugins. It was designed by Francois Tallier, and it's a lovely lens distortion effect. And it's got chromatic aberration built into it as well. And I really like the way that it just pulled the edges of the flares and pulled the sort of sun lines that we were doing. And again, it made them almost seem like it could have been reflected in an eye or shot with a really long camera lens that had some barrel distortion on it. Again, we're not necessarily going for realism here, we're going for something stylized, we're going for something almost hyper-real. On top of that, there's a camera lens blur effect, the standard After Effects camera lens blur effect, just with a little bit of highlight gain. Again, just helping the glow, helping that feeling of something really, really bright, the sun, being eclipsed by the moon. And then all of that was pre-comped into this, our final composition, which is at 2048 by 858, which is a 2K 239 aspect ratio composition. And I layered that pre-comp over a stock shot of a sky. This came from the website pexels.com, which is free stock photography. And I really wanted the clouds just to, not so much to be a sky, but to create a sense of noise, a sense of, again, just another layer of depth. And I took the cloud shot, I used turbulent displace with just a little bit of simple displacement and some evolution on that displacement. So you get a warping of the clouds. And then over the top of that, we layered our pre-comp of the Eclipse. And then what I like to do, what I love to do, is to go through the different layer modes in After Effects. Because sometimes you'll never know what you'll get. But the layer modes are a great way to blend two images together. And they can sometimes give you really beautiful and really surprising results. And if you use the Shift key and go plus and minus, you'll go up and down through these layer modes. So I went through them until I found one that I liked, which in this case is linear light. And that just let the clouds blend through the lighter areas of the Eclipse effect. Finally, another Optical Flares layer on top, just for a little bit of glint and glow. And then we tinted that Optical Flares effect. On top of that is another lens flare from the Legacy pack from Lens Distortions. Again, just helping soften off the image, simulate something more organic. We found a bit of that we liked, added some fast blur and a little bit of colour correction just to blend it into the shot. And then on top of that there's a grain layer from Vision Colour, some 4K grain, 35mm real grain overlaid over the top, and you can see again that just helps it feel much more like it was shot by a camera, adds some noise to the whole image, helps everything sit together. And finally on top of that, a twitch layer. Again, this is an effect from Video Copilot. And again, this is helping simulate something that might have been shot through a very, very long camera lens. You get distortion through the atmosphere if you shoot something a long, long way away. The camera might itself be wobbling in the wind. All these effects are there to make it feel more organic, to make it feel more natural, to make it feel less like something that was just created in After Effects in the computer. And that's it, that's the solar eclipse that we created for the short film Eclipse. If you haven't already, please watch the short film. It's on the My Road Reel website, the link is in the description below. Please vote for us if you like it, and watch the other tutorial if you have time on how we did the sky replacements. I'm Mark Ledyard, thanks very much for watching.